On a cold February night in 1968, my family and I first set foot in Thetford Mines, Quebec, after having left our island home of Haiti. I could see that the streets were deserted on Saturday nights, but I didn't know why. What was it that was keeping everyone at home? There was a fever, I was told. Hockey fever. That year, the Montreal Canadiens won the Stanley Cup. That year, I understood what the Montreal Canadiens represented for my adopted homeland. They were the heroic embodiment of this country's pride, daring, and courage. Best wishes to the Montreal Canadiens as you celebrate your 100th anniversary. Go, Habs, go!
When I was a kid, watching the Montreal Canadiens, it's the allure.
Here, the hockey team is like a religion.
Everybody adores them. It's like the biggest sport in Canada, right?
And everybody that loves hockey dreams one day of becoming, a hockey star.
Every kid's dream is to be a Montreal Canadian.
Being Canadian, you're born with it. It's just like maple syrup.
When it's all said and done, hockey's always going to be number one.
So if the seminal moment of the 60s was Expo 67 and the soundtrack to that were all the hippies and such, in the 70s, well, the seminal moment were the 76 Summer Games, the Olympics. Of course, you see Olympic Stadium right behind me here. The soundtrack to that, though, was the good old-fashioned disco where everybody was wearing really weird and nasty clothes, including the Habs, most notably Guy Lafleur, but the Habs kept on winning.
You have to understand when you're growing up in a city, those are your formative years. Things take on meaning. The downtown area, the Crescent area, I'd gigged so many times.
When I arrived in Montreal, it was something unbelievable. I didn't know if I was in North America or in Europe. I recorded that song in, gosh, it's 30 some odd years ago.
We were always ending up in these places, after hours bars, jazz clubs, anything around the Forum, And there'd be Guy with his friends, smoking up a storm and drinking up a storm.
This was that free spirit of that time.
The kind of Studio 54 kind of mentality that Lafleur was such a great symbol of.
In the modern era, with all the technology and you can take pictures on phones and all that, there's a lot less crazy stuff happening than there used to.
You put out a record? Didn't you put out a disco record?
Yeah, I was the one who invented the rap music.
You
Stand straight. Stand straight. With your feet shoulder-width apart. Now, bend your knees. Just your knees.
We did, it was hockey lessons with the group Toulouse in the background, so did it for the fun of it. So.
Sure. Whenever you talk about the Canadiens and playing in Montreal, so much of it is on the ice, but then there's a huge part of it that's not even on the ice. It's what happens afterwards. It's the party in the city, the nightlife in the city. You must have had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're in party 7 days a week.
Play 5.
We used to love to play guilty,
Yeah.
That's why we won. That's why we were winning, maybe.
The mark of a great score is consistency.
I remember Guy Lafleur, because he was friendly with my dad. They became friendly in Tremblant on the racetrack.
When I sang the national anthem, Guy Lafleur was there. And he looked at me and he said, "You sing it, girlie." Guy Lafleur. And I sang it, man. It was great.
I learned my very first French line before learning French in school, and that was the first star, la première étoile, Guy Lafleur.
My father was a dyed-in-the-wool Canadiens fan. We got him a Guy Lafleur shirt for Christmas one year, and he wore that Guy Lafleur shirt for every hockey game.
The Montreal Canadiens of the National Hockey League.
Petrov is coming down to the Canadian side. He's hit over the line.
I think one of the greatest hockey games that I've ever seen was that incredible New Year's Eve game. And I actually got fired from a gig in London, Ontario, the Seeps. I refused to go on stage because I wanted to see the game. It was that riveting.
What do you remember from that game? What that meant to the franchise?
Games like that the Canadians have participated in have sort of tattooed or made an emblem on the team around the world.
We were the best, they were the best, and this was finally that chance to play.
That game really needs to be put into focus by reconstructing where we were with Iron Curtain, communist country.
I mean, you'll never have that again, unless Cuba gets a hockey team.
We should have won it by a large margin, but Tretiak stood on his head.
The non-definitive result, the 3-3 tie, almost makes it more memorable.
The game is over.
It was just a great game.
Certainly in your career, in a time when politics and the language debate in this country was so divisive, what was it like the night Levesque won?
It was unlike any other night. Literally, I am sure that there were hundreds, if not thousands, of instances in that crowd where people had been sitting side by side year after year as season ticket holders with their team in common, that they found out something about that other person that they didn't know.
Wow.
And I would bet that that relationship was never the same again.
But the relationship between the fans and the team became stronger than ever as the Habs went on to hoist the Holy Grail 4 consecutive times.
It was a special time in the 70s. I was lucky to become a Canadiens fan at that time. It was a great era.
The greatest team that ever was the 76 Canadiens, that voted the greatest team.
They had a lot of flair. They had a lot of style. And it was that beautiful, that artistic.
They only lost one game all year at home. Of course, it was to us, but it was murder going in there. The crowd was beautiful.
The team was a big family. We stick together, you know, no matter what happened, and that's why we had so much success.
The characters in the Forum became larger than life. Don Cherry knows all about that.
We had the Stanley Cup right in our hands.
Very close for the Bruins winning that series against the Canadiens.
This was the 7th game, as everybody knows, and whoever won this game was going to win the Stanley Cup. With 1:43 to go, we had too many guys on the ice.
Cherry's on the bench, raising his arms like this.
Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
Only Lafleur could have put it along the ice in that far corner, tied up the game. They went on to win the Stanley Cup.
For the 4th consecutive time.
The Canadians are great at parades. I mean, you know, you get good when you do it all the time.
Certainly.
As the decade closed, the Canadians and the country would face new unforeseen challenges.
Vous êtes en train de dire à la prochaine fois.